So nice to see all of you here. Oh my gosh. Um, yeah, we're going to have fun today doing some healing in the field of the three gunas and looking at the tapestry of life and how the underlying scaffolding is, interfaces or gives rise to the material level of creation. And there's just laws of nature, simple laws of nature that are responsible for that process. And once we understand those laws of nature, it becomes a lot easier to self-position in order to produce effects that are the effects that we want, essentially. So anyway, it all ties back to energy healing, of course, but it's good to be with you. And I call today's session Energy Healing for the Tapestry of Life. And I'll start, as always, with a brief description of what is energy healing for those of you who are new. Energy healing is the practice of using awareness as the, I'm looking for a word, as like, it's like your ticket. Awareness is your get out of jail free pass, using awareness as the instrument for the healing process, because problems arise first from deep within, and then they bubble up to the surface, even if it's something that seems to come from the outside, like an accident or something. And the problem sits inside first, and then it bubbles up to the surface, which means that it has a reality on the level of consciousness first. And that means that we can affect changes in the problems and challenges that we face through the application of consciousness. Now, in our modern society, what happens is a bubble rises up to the surface and we have symptoms, and we go to the doctor and we say, "Doctor, I'm not doing well. What do you suggest?" The doctor will suggest something from the outside, an outside influence, such as, sorry, I just drank a bunch of water, such as medications or surgeries or procedures of some sort. And what those medications and surgeries and so do is they're like your get out of jail free card. They're your ticket. They're the ticket that says, here, have this ticket. With this ticket, you can get over the illness. And then what that does is the ticket sort of like activates the internal changes that are required to, ideally, it activates the internal changes that are required to get out of or transcend past the illness, and essentially to activate your inner healing potential, which is what actually heals you. Really, we heal ourselves. And there's a lovely woman who's been speaking about this for a long time. She's been working on it decades now, Dr. Lissa Rankin. And I remember mentioning her at some of my early webinars years ago, because she had been studying the placebo effect, and she didn't understand why every known disease to man has at least one point or another been cured through the placebo effect. And the question is, what triggers the placebo effect? And modern medicine wasn't really looking into that. Probably there isn't a lot of financial benefit to be gained by looking into or testing or creating research around the placebo effect. But energy healing is definitely a technique that leverages the laws of nature that become active during the placebo effect. That's what we're doing. We're using consciousness. We're kind of like bypassing, and I'm not saying you don't stop taking your medications if you're on medications. I'm just saying that energy healing, in addition to the blessings and benefits of Western medicine, also is very powerful and can be very helpful, because energy medicine can work down at the substrata of the physiology, at the deeper levels, and address those areas in ways that are really powerful and effective. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to experience that today. I can hardly wait to dive in with all of you. So let's start. The next thing is we'll do our 3 minutes of silence. I always like to start with 3 minutes of silence. Why? Because life is like the ocean. It has the surface, the superficial level, all the way down, deep down to the subtler, most abstract, all the way down to the where the water is on my background here, to the silent, eternal, transcendental source of creation at the foundation of everything. And you are all that. You are all of that. And so to start out the webinars, it's really nice to start with a few moments of just diving the awareness in, turning the awareness around from the outward to the inward, and get a chance to feel that sweet inner silence. So thank you. Oh, I'll ask you to close the eyes. Don't mind the time. After 3 minutes, I'll ask you to open the eyes. Take a minute or two to open the eyes slowly so that all that sweet silence comes out to the surface with the awareness. All right, let's close our eyes. All right. Let's take a few moments before opening the eyes. Now I'm going to do a prayer of gratitude. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. Thank you for being all of us, and for being the whole universe. Thank you for being that most essential, precious connection, that bridge of knowledge, eternal knowledge that sits between the unmanifest absolute and its entire field of expression. Thank you for our webinar, that we may use today's webinar in the most beautiful, powerful, profound, meaningful, and valuable way. Thank you to each of you for being here and being with me. I'm very grateful to be in this position and to be of service. And I'm looking forward to some beautiful healing work today with all of you. And thank you. Just thank you. Thank you all for bearing with me through yesterday's healing session. I thought we might start out today with a couple of questions that I was not able to answer yesterday. One that came in this morning, yay. Last night when we were falling asleep, Tom and I were discussing, we always kind of, review our own minds, what goes on with the webinars. And Tom was saying, well, maybe we should, that's my husband, by the way, for those who don't know. We're sort of like a two-person operation here. So there's just the two of us doing this. But anyway, he was saying, well, maybe we should give everyone a survey, so that we could find out, because yesterday's webinar was a little different from the usual. I showed a lot of charts. I had these ribbons. I had the scarves and the ribbons that I was using to demonstrate with, and lots of diagrams and pictures and so forth. And he said, maybe people don't like that, or maybe they didn't like it or something. We don't know. It's different from your usual. So he was a little concerned about that. But anyway, this nice question came in today that said that it was nice that she said that she enjoyed the ribbons and so forth, and the scarves, and it kind of helped make things make a little more sense. So usually at this point, what I do is a brief review of yesterday. So I think I will go ahead and throw a couple more charts up here again. Yeah, so not only did this wonderful diagram come in from one of our participants, but also a great question, which I did not answer last night. So we shall go into his question today for sure. But anyway, he drew this, he's an artist, and he drew this lovely diagram. And this does a really good job of describing, this diagram does a really good job of kind of describing the nature of the three gunas, I think, especially these arrows. This ties in, yesterday I started with a quote from the Gita, Nistrigunyo Bhavarjun, where Krishna advises Arjuna to go beyond the three gunas, just get out of them and get past them and beyond them, because it's beyond the three gunas that you have access to that vast, eternal resource to solve all problems, and to be able to harmonize the conundrum that Arjuna was experiencing, because he was like, well, I should be respectful and kind and loving and good to my kinsmen, but I have to actually kill them in order to rid the world of evil. So how do I reconcile? And Krishna's point is, you can reconcile these types of opposites, these really profound and intense opposites, within the field of absolute being. So in my friend's picture, they've got the ocean down here at the bottom too, which represents the source of creation or divine being. And then I love how this wave in this picture goes pretty much all the way up. It goes almost to the very top of the diagram, because the three gunas really are present at every point in creation, all the way at the gross manifest level, at the most manifest level. Anyway, when I read the commentary, Maharishi's commentary in the Gita, one of the things he pointed out was that Rajas is the spur. He used that word as the spur. And so what that means, you could just, inspiration down here, Rajas is present here too. We could maybe make a tiny little modification on this. This is a great chart, but just this one little teeny modification, Rajas could be here as well as here, because Rajas is present in the turn. Sattva and tamas cancel each other out because one is going in this direction and one is going in this down direction over here. So when they get together, they kind of create like a neutral or a zero, you could say. But the Rajas is present at the point of transition between those two. So I thought that was very interesting because that, for me, that was kind of an aha moment. I had not thought of it that way exactly. I was thinking more in terms of Rajas as a sort of like a maintaining energy, right? That sattva brings the intentions of the creator out to the surface of life and allows them to manifest at all different levels, subtle levels, denser levels, gross, densest levels. And then tamas is the energy that kind of draws everything back to the source of creation. But that's not actually what Maharishi said. In the commentary, I had to look a little more closely, that tamas is the value that keeps the awareness or keeps the self gripped in the relative. And in a sense, that makes so much more sense to me than what I was thinking. It makes so much sense in alignment with what we're doing in energy healing. Because in energy healing, the moment that you need healing, the moment that suffering comes in is the moment when one becomes gripped by the relative level of creation, caught in it, and loses that sense of connection to the source of creation, forgets, right? The moment the soul forgets, oh, I am anchored to the source of creation, I can never get out of the source of creation. The source of creation is baked into every particle of my being. When you forget that, that's the moment that the suffering comes in. That's the part. And we can know it. You can know, oh yes, I am source. I am so integrated with the whole universe and the whole field of creation. You can even experience it, but like one little teeny part of you doesn't experience it. That can happen. Like one little part, like even a cell or some subcellular structure. We all tend to, for months now, you guys know, we've been working in these sessions and in the remote healing sessions and private consultations too, some of them with the epigenome, which is part of the subcellular structure of the body. And the epigenome is where the conditioning and the beliefs and the attitudes and some also feelings and emotions from the ancestors are expressed, where they live inside of us. And some of the beliefs and conditioning and feelings that we inherited from our predecessors, as good as they are, that they gave rise to us, and that we have bodies in this lifetime and experience what it's like being human. God bless them. A lot of them didn't completely understand their connection to the source of creation. So we've spent a lot of time with the epigenome. And I think I'd like to just take a minute, because yesterday's session didn't have a lot of healings. So let's just take a moment and we'll do a little scan of the epigenome. We'll find that for each one of us. Oh, by the way, the epigenome is also the part of your body that tells the DNA how to show up. So the key to healing cancer, for example, just as an example, is to restructure the epigenome so that it instructs the DNA to show up as a healthy cell. The DNA, the blueprint as a healthy cell. And what is that energy in the epigenome that could cause the DNA to show up in a way that is self-destructive, that creates like cancer and causes the cell to self-destruct? The feeling of not good enough, disposable, insufficient, separate from the source of creation. Oh, it's that thing we were just talking about, isn't it? It's that feeling of I didn't cut the mustard. I'm not good enough. I'm just not good enough. That feeling, I'm not good enough. That's the feeling. So that feeling, it can go back for many generations. It can get stuck at a really deep level of the physiology. So it feels baked in, but what's actually baked in there is the potential to realize your divinity. That's what actually sits in that precise spot or area of the epigenome. The epigenome, by the way, physically is a electromagnetic kind of spectral array of electromagnetic impulses produced by ionized proteins. So the DNA has this sort of soup of ionized proteins around it. And the ionized proteins create a little electromagnetic field, a very specified electromagnetic field around the DNA. I have, Tom, can you make a note? We'll send everybody the epigenome. I have written up a little something on the epigenome with some links to some lovely resources to give you just a little more straight on science, because I'm not really a medical doctor or anything, but some straight on science about the epigenome. But it's fascinating. And the most fascinating thing in my eyes about the epigenome is that it is highly, highly responsive to our feelings. That's right. What you feel impacts your epigenome. How about that? That means you have some autonomy and control over it. You've got agency over the way your epigenome arranges itself, which means you have autonomy over how your DNA shows up. And you have autonomy over whether you've got healthy cells showing up or unhealthy cells showing up. So you can do this. Okay. Sorry, I have to keep drinking water because I got dehydrated out in the garden this morning. And yeah, anyway, there's more to be said about that, but it's okay. So we're going into the epigenome. We're just going to feel into the cells. Awareness goes to the cellular level of the body and the subcellular level of the body. Not all the structures in the body are cellular, you know. I mean, we've got all kinds of things like plasma and strands of collagen and different materials all in and around our body, but the cells, and in the center, the nucleus of the cells, and in the center of the nucleus of the cells where the DNA resides all around, there's this lovely sort of cushion. You could think of it as a cushion of this beautiful, like tapestry-like spectral array of electromagnetic impulses. Some are positive, some are negative. This is so good for anybody who's having issues with their nervous systems as well. It's for some people, the journey is into the cells of the nervous system. For some it is. I'm just scanning while we're doing it, obviously, and reading and telling you what I see and read from it. And in there, that seeking out the pattern of electromagnetic impulses that communicates, I'm not good enough. That pattern of impulses that says the source of creation is something out there somewhere, and I'm just in here somewhere. And what I'm noticing is a flow. I'm noticing a flow of the sweetest love, the sweetest compassion, self-acceptance, recognition. When our awareness dives in and penetrates the cells and penetrates the nucleus of the cells, what we find there is intelligence. We have intelligence deep within us at the subtle level of the physiology. And that intelligence is like, it responds the way house plants or pets respond, or the way friendships respond. When you give them attention, when you care for them, they become robust. They thrive. So that intelligence deep within the cells, the intelligence responsible for structuring the tapestry of the epigenome around the DNA, responds. It's like we feed it with our love. The love helps bring all kinds of resources and softness. Like it acts like a channel or a conduit, a vehicle for truth. Truth is the healer. Truth is what heals. The truth that there's just one source of creation, and we're just all part of that. We're never out of it. You're never away from it. You're never separated from it, really, never. And if you feel disparaging on yourself, then this is only to draw your attention in and reestablish the truth of the divine presence, which is your essential nature at that level, at the level of the epigenome. And what that does is it causes the physiology and the being to speak to the universe in a certain way, to radiate divinity in a certain, to be the vehicle of divinity in a certain way. Speaks to the ancestors. The love speaks through the channels of love. We speak to the ancestors. It's as if embracing them in the softest love, in the softest cushion of adoration and compassion, and holding them and loving them and whispering to them, you are the universe. You are the vehicle of the divine in this creation, regardless of circumstances or situations that may indicate the contrary. And the universe is full of situations and circumstances that indicate the contrary. That's a tamas. That's a tamasic side, right? And there's just as much, there's like equal amounts, sattva, rajas, and tamas. So we're working with certain laws of nature, inescapable certain laws of nature. So that's just the way that be. So there are going to be circumstances and situations that communicate that, but they're always there to act like a magnet. It draws your awareness into the particular part of your own nature that needs to be reconnected to or reunited with wholeness. And that's what tamasic energy does, is it tends to deconstruct so that one goes back to the source of creation, essentially. It provides, I feel it provides a nice contrast for the sort of blossoming of life on the surface of the universe. It provides a contrast that sets up a condition that allows awareness to go in. And that's a gift. It's a blessing. It's beautiful. Like you're beautiful. And the ancestors are beautiful. The ancestors are beautiful. They are the ones that were here, that made offspring, and that became part of a lineage that is very big. It goes in both directions, right? And it's really, really big. So. Okay. So my friend who made the beautiful diagram, and, a shout out to him for his artistry and his wisdom and his intelligence making this. He also did this. This guy is so brilliant. I love him. He also did this wild thing where he sent me this text where he tied together the whole system of working with the three gunas with the previous webinar topic, which was the three Mahamarmas. So if I have some time, we'll get to that too, because that was way cool, really good stuff. Anyway, thank you with all my heart. So his question was about good and evil, as I recall. No, that's not the question. Let's see, it's this one here. Then I'll go to that question. Okay, so this brings me to a question for the group. We tend to think of something sattvic as good and tamasic as bad, but they are both parts of a very natural cycle. Yeah, he got that. Can we focus on distinguishing between sattvic and tamasic energies and good and evil? Because then what is good and evil? And I'm so glad he asked this, because good and evil is such an interesting topic. And I think I'm going to do a whole webinar on it upcoming, but just to touch on it here. This is the part of the webinar where we wake up where part of the divine form wakes up. Each of us. Okay, so accepting, we did the healing. We did the healing for the epigenome. Very nice, very beautiful. Parts of the epigenome that thought, I'm not good enough. Now they think, okay, I'm divine. It's good. And so my ancestors also divine. How nice, right? How lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you all. But what does that mean, actually? What does that actually mean and feel like? This will also tie into the other question that came in a little bit, which is that what it means is, from the level of consciousness, we have access to the more abstract levels of our own nature. right? So the divine is here, and it's qualityless and eternal and absolute. So when awareness goes into that eternal, absolute, qualityless ocean of transcendental being, it feels very natural and one feels very at home, but it doesn't have a lot of character per se. There's not a lot of character. It's all character. It's all character and no character. It's everything. It's everything at the same time. It just is. It cannot be described. It cannot be described. It can be experienced, but it cannot be described. However, as that rajasic energy, that's the spur, activates up the flow of intention from the source of creation, we get forms rising up that have a lot of character, that are archetypal forms, and our expressions are like concentrated packages of the laws of nature that reside down here which ties into another diagram, but I don't think I'll take my time to go over there. But we saw yesterday that packages of laws of nature that are the byproduct of the humming flow, the flow of life force coming from the source of creation and coming into these regions of the causal body. Just like my air going in my bottle, right? It's just an empty space. So you say, well, the empty space isn't a musical instrument. It doesn't do anything. It's just empty space. But if it has that flow in it, then it becomes a musical instrument. How lovely is that? And so the same thing, the regions of the causal body, the regions of the causal body. So there's this region of the causal body that is responsible for all the laws of nature, all the laws. And that's like a really powerful part of oneself. It has a name. Manu. Manu is the name. And the reason it has a name is that the sound quality of the word Manu is actually the frequency representation of that form of creation, because is the flow of the hum of the universe. Is the hum of the universe, and is totality and wholeness. So the hum of the universe reflecting into the source of creation. N is the negation, and U is like a modified ah. All the vowels are modified ahs, but it represents the chandas, or I could have also done a lot of tying together of sattva, rajas, and tamas with rishi, devata, and chandas, but I didn't do that. But anyway, chandas is it's like the expressed side, the known. You can just say it's the known. It represents the field of creation, the known. And sometimes as chandas resides down in the source of creation, it is that unmanifest, unknowable, indescribable being known. It is that being known. That's chandas. So Manu. Manu. Just as awareness can penetrate into the cellular structures of the body, so the awareness can penetrate into the causal field of self and find Manu. Manu is here. Manu is nurtured more by reverence, more with reverence and appreciation than with compassion. Manu is part of you. Manu, you. Manu is that aspect of you that's responsible for the manifestation of all the laws of nature. Yes, that is part of you. We have many parts. We are multifaceted, multidimensional. And in the heart, the connection to Manu stabilizes in preparation to ask the question, is the law of evolution really the first law of the universe? The answer that comes back is that it may be simple to say evolution is the first law of the universe without defining evolution. Okay. Like, I wasn't expecting that answer, but okay, that's good. And that if we define evolution in terms of the truth made manifest, then yes, the truth made manifest. The vision of it sort of unfolding for me, so that's why I'm being quiet. It's a big vision. The truth is that the unmanifest being expresses itself as all this universe. That's the truth. That's the one truth. And yes, that's the one, that's the fundamental of the universe. So good and evil. Let's talk about good and evil for a minute. In this creation, we define good as that which upholds evolution, that which allows the truth with a big T, to find expression in this world of boundaries and limitations and partial truths, right? Because if there's one big truth, there's like one big truth, and it's really big and it's indescribable and unknowable, then here in the material level of creation, there's what? There's only going to be like pieces of the truth and aspects of the truth and flavors of it and segments of it like that. At any given moment, only a specific limited number of laws of nature can manifest. Because there are laws of nature that all the laws of nature, there's so many they cancel each other out, right? So if you have all the laws of nature at once, they just cancel each other out. So because we have a world that is describable and experienceable, then it means that at any given moment, there's only certain laws of nature that are manifesting. Good is that which aligns with the current laws of nature. It works with the laws of nature and the creation as it exists right now to produce an evolutionary effect. And that even means horrible things. That even means if terrible things happen. I'll give you an example. I don't mind being a little vulnerable. So prior to today's webinar, I was out in the garden and I was just finishing up, and there was a woman walking by my house. I didn't recognize her. And I was trying to manipulate my wheelbarrow that was filled, overflowing to the brim with the weeds I had dug out of the garden. And my knee pad caught on the handle of the wheelbarrow and the whole thing tipped over. And it's like, I saw it in slow motion, and it's almost like there were moments when I could have chosen to move my body slightly differently so I did not tip over the wheelbarrow, but I tipped over the wheelbarrow. And the timing was perfect. And she was like, oh dear. And she came over to help me. Well, it just so happened, even though I didn't recognize her at first, she was a dear old friend that I had been thinking of and hadn't seen for 20 years. And if I hadn't tipped over my wheelbarrow at that moment, she would not have come over, and we would not have had a moment to reconnect with each other. After all these 20 years, I was literally thinking about her just before she walked by. And I was thinking, I wonder how she's doing. I wonder how her children are, like that. Okay. But she changed quite a bit. So when she was walking by, it was like, oh, is that her? Well, I don't know, but I made myself a little vulnerable, right? I fell over it didn't hurt myself. It was nothing. It was like slow motion. Like every movement of my body was like carefully orchestrated practically. So, it's almost just like a show just to get her to come over and help me with my wheelbarrow. But anyway, but you see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Tipping over your wheelbarrow in front of a stranger. How embarrassing. Here I am. I should be better than like to not fall, right? But it was so perfect. It was so meant to be. It was so fulfilling. It was so useful for the evolutionary flow of my life and of her life and for our family's lives and for my day and for moving forward and for satisfying that urge that I had to see my friend, You just take that negative, that little embarrassing moment and just turn it around into something so delightful. So I wouldn't, if I had to go back and do it again, would I have done it any other way? Maybe I would have looked past the sunglasses and the hat and all the coverings that she had on and went, wait a minute, that's my friend, and yelled her name to her. I might have, but I might not have because I wasn't looking that carefully at her. Just the feeling was there. I recognized her. I felt her soul. And I'm like, I got to get her to come over here. What is good and what is evil? Falling down with your pile of weeds, that's kind of bad. But it's good. And the difference between good and evil is completely on how we position ourselves and approach the situations and circumstances that come our way. So we can say, yes, evil is whatever that expression of creation is that's engaged in not evolving. And what causes non-evolution? Separation from the source of creation. A deep-seated like commitment and belief and adherence to I am separate. I am not connected to wholeness. You can't escape being connected to wholeness. You are wholeness. Like that's the truth. And anything that tells you otherwise will elicit a feeling of anger. Because deep inside, we all know the truth. But on the surface of life, there are so many forms and phenomena that are telling us otherwise. And when those forms and phenomena rise up and have their day, when darkness has its day, evil has its day, then it gives rise to feelings of rebellious feelings like, but no. And that's the purpose of anger. You could say, well, anger's evil, right? Because anger spurs people to do bad things. And so, well, in its potential, when it's being leveraged, when you're living your full potential and you're leveraging all the feelings that you have, part of those spectral rays, right? You're leveraging them for their full potential. Then anger becomes an energy that helps reveal the truth. And that's what anger is here for in this world. I finally realized. It's said, and I think it's even said in the Vedas, that anger is like the great enemy here on earth. I think it's called a great enemy here on earth. But that's conditional. Anger is the great enemy here on earth when people aren't using it, when they're not recognizing its potential and using it for its purpose. And its purpose is it focuses in like an arrow. It's almost always associated with something, some situation or circumstance or person or something. And anger zeroes in on that thing. And it zeroes in on it because that's the spot where the truth is not the real truth, the big truth with a big capital T, is not conjoined with what's showing up at the surface. And the anger is this wonderful, very lively, like powerful energy. It's got a lot of oomph in it that allows the shroud, it allows the shroud and the camouflage to be peeled away from circumstances and situations at the surface of life so that the truth can shine forth and radiate. It radiates. And sometimes it even becomes active and expresses itself. But with the anger, it's not that the situation calls for you bubbling up and yelling and like that. The anger is directed through the channel of truth. It has to be directed through the channel of truth. So you speak the truth. You say the truth. You don't have to say it in a harsh way. Let the universe do that. Let the universe, because there are times when people are stubbornly holding on to non-truth, and when people are sending that message to the universe, I am stubbornly holding on to non-truth, then the universe is like, well, you know what? I'm going to need to smack you a little bit to get you to see the truth. But you don't have to be that person. You don't have to be the deliverer of the smack. Say the truth. Just say it. Say it and give the person, whoever they are, or the situation, a chance to resolve itself gracefully, with dignity. And then if they don't, let the universe take the next step with them. That's all. It's simple. And hopefully the universe will be discerning in that process, just as you were discerning when you just spoke the truth. Good and evil. Good and evil. So good adheres to evolution, and evil adheres to non-evolution. And non-evolution can be summed up in being gripped or held in the material level of creation as separate from the source of creation. And that is also, to a certain degree, the description of what is tamasic. Tamas, as was described in yesterday, I read from the Gita, and you can look for yourself, chapter 2, verse 45, if you want. Maharishi's commentary is, if you get this one that's got Maharishi there, you can see what he says about it. But the point is that tamas is that energy that binds or holds the creation into the relative field and holds it as separate. It can hold it as separate from the absolute. Eventually, I made all these diagrams yesterday. Oh boy, did I make some. My best one was the messiest one. Did we see what happened to that? Oh yeah. So I don't have to make it again, right? I made a bunch of this is my favorite diagram here, this one. The messy one. And what I was showing in this diagram, it still smells like a like a Sharpie marker. What I'm showing in this one is, let's see, I was showing how different life forms, these could be human lifetimes, or these could be different causal structures. They can be all kinds of, but anyway, how they rise up out of the creation like this. They rise up with the intention. Right here is the intention of the truth, living truth, the intention for the living truth. And it rises up and it's like, I'm the truth, I'm the truth, I'm the truth, I'm the truth, I'm the truth. Oh, I'm gripped by what's going on. And I feel like I'm so caught up in what's happening here. I've lost my connection to wholeness. Oh, we come back. And then it rises up again, only this time higher, right? Because when it comes back, something gets modified. We're going to talk about that in a minute for the next question. It rises up, but it rises to a little bit, oh gosh, it's really hard to draw like this, to a little bit higher level like that until it gets gripped. And then it's drawn back home again. But eventually what happens, this cool diagram, is that in and out and in and out and in and out happens again. And the form itself, and this is what we're doing in our physical forms as well, you guys. This is what energy healing is all about, is refining the form, refining the actual material form to the point that the form is so refined, it cannot find itself separate from the source of creation. It's all of this. And there's no more in and out and in and out and in and out. It's just the form is so refined and the consciousness is so refined that all of it's just the one. And it can happen at this level here. And it can happen all the way up at the physical material level here, that it's just one, it's one, it's one, it's one, it's one, it's one. It's all one. It's all one. And there's no feeling of going, then there's no more feeling of going in and out There's no more. That's when you transcend the cycle of birth and death, too. There's no more birth and death. It's just wholeness. I'm just wholeness living in a human body. That's all. I'm wholeness. Your wholeness. The thing is, you did this when you were in a subtle body, all the way, and you transcended the subtle body regions of expression. And then you got a chance to come up and be in a grosser body. And then you did it again in a grosser body, in an astral body, again, billions of years, until you did it. And you're like, in this astral body, I am one, and I know I'm one, and I got that. I learned it. I got it. Then you got to transcend up, and then you got to form up. Then you got to take a form that's even more dense, even more expressed, and then even more expressed. And now we're in these physical bodies, even more expressed, and we get to do it again, until we've learned to handle the physiology to such a degree, it becomes so refined that it's just, we know I am one. I am that. I am that experiencing human experience. So much love, so much sweetness flowing right now to help create a bed or a context to allow that to happen, and to allow all the little pieces, bits and pieces and parts of ourselves that we think of as insufficient and not good enough to easily, gracefully, with dignity, shift the way they need to shift, right? Just bringing out the truth. You're just bringing out the truth, and the parts that need to shift are allowed and able to shift with dignity. And it doesn't create stress in the system. It doesn't overwhelm the system. It just is what you're doing. This is just who you are and what you're doing. And I think it's really the love and compassion that allows that to happen. And the love and compassion also is evolving. It becomes greater and greater. The system or the physiology has a need for greater and greater impulses of that softness, that sweetness of love to be present in order to make the bigger shifts, the bigger turns. It's a big love. Big loves come to make the big turns. It opens up new chambers of the heart. We're opening new chambers of the heart in order to make the big turns. Bringing me nicely to the next question, which is, sweet lady, she says, she started out this practice lately that when she feels gripped by tamasic situations, then she asks, what needs to evolve here? And what can I do to participate in the evolution? That's so brilliant. That is so right. That is just so right on. And listen to this. She said, that works. That works very nicely at the intellectual, emotional, physical level. And might you be willing to articulate in more detail the process of folding consciousness back to the source of creation? This would be very helpful for my ability to work with the energetic, non-physical levels. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this great question, and also for your brilliance and for your intelligence to have already kind of forged a path for yourself that's working. God bless, right? So the thing is that it helps to have a mental technique to actually directly experience the source of creation. Of course, we all experience it. It's baked into our physiologies. It's baked into every particle of ourselves, between every breath, between every thought, between all the states of waking, dreaming, sleeping. You can find that place of yourself as you're transitioning from waking state to sleep state at night, for example. Mental techniques are great. If you check my knowledge base, the first entry on the knowledge base is called the 112-point matrix, and it lays out the path of experiencing the source of creation in detail. So there is that. However, what I wanted to talk about today, because you mentioned intellectually, emotionally, physically, what I wanted to talk about was the fine level down here, down in the gap between the unmanifest and finest abstract level is where the sense of self resides. I'm feeling more reference going, by the way, to Manu. I'm just noticing that as I started talking about the sense of self, because what are we doing? We are restructuring our sense of self at a level that is beyond verbal facility. So it's a restructuring. In energy healing, what we're doing is the energy moves down at this very, very, very fine, most delicate level of being, beyond speech. Beyond description, even beyond, I would say, beyond feelings as we tend to understand them, and into a realm of very, very delicate, nuanced movements of consciousness. That's what happens down here in this gap, are these nuanced movements of consciousness. And what they do is they reconfigure the foundation of what we know ourselves to be and how we think of ourselves. It's quiet. It's real quiet down there. It's really quiet. And there's absolutely an element of offering the movement itself, or like allowing the movement of self, like I would say surrendering. We could use the word surrender, although I have certain family members who don't like that word. But, but I'm going to use that word today anyway, which is giving the giving the responsibility of how the energy needs to move in the gap over to the infinite intelligence of divine being. Allowing that initial impulse of inspiration that rises from the source of creation to be the guiding principle behind, allowing evolution to be the guiding principle behind the movements of energy in that very subtle level of creation. It's very much beyond the way we consciously think. It's not conscious. It's not a conscious thinking level of consciousness. It's a deep inner knowing level of consciousness. It's a sense of aligning or attuning oneself to the evolutionary flow of the creator and the creation, and what that means to align, to be like in the middle of the river. The evolutionary river is flowing and we're like, right in the center, not getting bogged down in some little side tangent or something. Right in the middle of the flow. And it's got this wonderful kind of sparkly, expansive quality to it. Inspired. It's inspired. And it is your full potential. It's your pure potential. It aligns perfectly with the intention that you brought into this lifetime, why you're here. And the desires of the heart. So, my precious one. Yes, we did that healing. Someone just asked here if we could do a healing for her dear, dear friend from cancer. And we did that in this. And I hope you can share this recording and the work that we did today in that area with your precious, beautiful, sweet friend, that she can also get it through this. Oh yes, question. Gita chapter 3, verse 37. That's a different one. Wait, we've got the TM teachers in the chapter 3, verse 3. I was looking at chapter 2, verse 45, Nistre Gunyo Bavarjun. But chapter 3, verse 37. 36, 37. It is the desire. The blessed Lord said, it is desire. It is anger born of Rajoguna. Oh, look at that. The guna, all consuming and most evil. Know this to be the enemy here on earth. Yes, that's the verse that says it's the enemy here on earth. It's the enemy. It's the enemy. When it rises through Rajoguna and Tamas as well and destroys. Thank you. But the thing is that it's not, none of us are a stranger to anger, right? We've all experienced anger at some point or another. And the whole value or quality of anger, so interesting. I have to read a little bit, is he says Rajoguna, Rajas, one of the three gunas of nature, is responsible for motion and energy. Motion and energy. So it's the spur, just like he said in the chapter 2, verse 45. It is the desire that establishes contact with the senses, with their objects, and thereby influences the self by way of attachment or aversion, which in turn creates a spur to activity involving the self. I guess the principle is awareness established in wholeness. Everything is turned into a tool for evolution. Everything turns to a tool for evolution without exception. And at one point, Maharishi said, you will write the versions of this book that appeal to the higher states of consciousness. He wrote this book. He even says that in the beginning, I think, that he could have written the book from the angle of cosmic consciousness or God consciousness or unity consciousness or Brahman consciousness. He could have written it from all those angles, but he didn't. He really wanted it to be very, very accessible for people who are just starting out on the path of higher states of consciousness. And so he wrote it more toward sort of aiming towards cosmic consciousness, transcendental consciousness and cosmic consciousness. And that from the other states of consciousness, it looks a little different. The story looks a little different. And what's different is that everything becomes an instrument for evolution. Everything. Anger exists in creation. There is a reason why anger exists. Yes, for those who are gripped, for those who become gripped easily by the material level of creation, anger grips and it turns into this big, horrible, destructive thing, and yelling and who knows what else. But for one who witnesses, and we did a healing yesterday for witnessing, so you can go back to yesterday's session, anybody who wants to do that. But the lady who put this in, she already knows witnessing well, so he may not need that one, my love. But the point is that it exists. My experience is it exists, that Rajoguna becomes sort of active and creates friction in the field between what's showing up at the surface that's not true, non-truth showing up at the surface, and the truth that we know deep inside all of us, really essentially know it in our bones, in our guts. We know the truth. And when our guts tell us one thing and the surface tells us something else, that creates a friction, that creates a conflict, essentially becomes sort of like this internal conflict. And one can go on living with the internal conflict up to a point until the conflict starts to mess with you, until it starts to mess with life and situations and reality. And then at that point, it's like that conflict can give rise to a feeling of frustration and anger. And the feeling of frustration and anger is the indicator or the sign from nature to step back and witness, for one thing. So one is not gripped by the anger. And I think that's the purpose of that verse, by the way, chapter 3, verse 37, is that knowing that if one becomes gripped by anger, like overwhelmed by anger, that one cannot trust their own speech or action or thoughts even, or feelings. You can't trust yourself to take an evolutionary stance because anger is like that. It is really quite a dark energy. So the principle is, of course, to Nistre Gunyo Bhavarjun, chapter 2, verse 45, is to be without the three gunas, right? To transcend the gripping effect of the anger and to take the action that needs to be taken. In this case, the action he needs to take is to go kill people. Like that's the message is, yeah, you got to go out there and you got to kill those guys that are your family and friends and teachers and kinsmen, because they are holding the darkness on the earth. They are gripped by the anger. They are gripped by anger and greed and selfishness and adharma, etc. And you have to, in order to uphold it, you have to take an action that may not be the fun action. It's not the comfortable action. It's the action that is associated with truth. Thank you. I'm so glad you brought that up. See, some people in our group know the Gita better than I do, and they know these gunas. They know these gunas. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Great question. Amazing. Oh, there's a hello from England. Hello in England. So good. So good to have you here. Shouldn't it be, here's another question. Shouldn't it be ascending channel with the highest, with higher lows rather than going all the way back to the baseline or zero as it appears in the chart? You don't lose all your gains each time. You retain some or most of them. Yes. Okay, so this question is a great question. It ties into the fact that there are cycles within cycles within cycles. So there are highs and lows here and here and here and here. So all three gunas are present in the entire field of expression, absolutely. And the refinement and evolution that you garner in a particular lifetime or within yourself at any point, that evolution is not lost. Maybe you're evolving and you're evolving very high and you evolve up to a really high point, and then something happens, you hit some blockage and you've got to do some reclaiming, rebounding back home again situation. You don't, as you rebound back home, all the evolution that you gained splashes into the ocean of consciousness deep within, and the ocean of being goes, that's just me. Delicious, luscious, beautiful, refined, wonderful. Look at all the evolutionary work that person did in their lifetime as that impulse, that same impulse rises back up to become the next lifetime. It's, they necessarily are blessed. They necessarily are blessed with a physiology that carries all that refinement and all that evolution that was garnered in the previous lifetime. If it is a full, complete recall all the way back home, death, if it's all the way to death. But if it's not all the way to death, the principle still holds that if there's a part, say there's a segment or a part of the body that has lost its connection to wholeness, when it dives back in and it becomes reestablished to wholeness, all the parts of the self that were already connected are not lost. They're not lost. They help carry the process through to the next cycle of expression. And that's why it's really nice when we're dealing with ourselves and anger comes up or any other discordant feeling, that we handle it by, I'm going to use the word surrendering again, but I would say surrendering to the truth, or giving autonomy to the source of creation to guide by the light of truth the next steps or actions. And that can be done in a way that doesn't overwhelm the nervous system and is really comfortable and allows that any refinement that was accrued previously to be maintained. Overwhelm can temporarily overshadow some evolutionary progress or some refinement if it wasn't stable enough, if it wasn't locked in enough. I have this one beautiful woman, I don't know if she's with us today, but because the list is very long and I'm not going to take time to check it, but I remember when I first met her, she'd say, I was amazing. I was sparkling. I was at such a high level of consciousness, and so in my grace and in my power and in my highest self. And then this horrible situation came up and just crushed me, and it dragged me down, and it pulled me into the depths of very difficult situation. And the point is that she didn't really lose. Part of our conversation was that what she achieved, the heights of achievement that she had reached, are not really lost, but they were not stable enough. They were not integrated with the physiology enough, because really we're in this conversation between consciousness expanding and the physiology refining. So consciousness can expand to these tremendous places, but if the physiology isn't integrated with that experience, then that experience can be lost, and it can feel really like a terrible loss. But if you glimpsed it, you can come back to it. You can get back to it, but it means some time working with the physiology and get refining and purifying and healing the physiology. And she's back. She just emailed me yesterday, and she's like, I'm back. I'm like, yes, because now it's solid. Now it's solid. Now the physiology is integrated. She won't lose it this time. I hope that helps answer the question. So beautiful. It's assuring to think of the anger in this world as a reflection of people's starting to sense the non-truth. Oh, yes, absolutely. In the world, yes, absolutely. There seems to be misdirection, projection, and displacement of this anger. Yes, because of unawareness. Yes, I agree. When the individual is unable, the anger is such a difficult emotion, right? So it can be overwhelming, and the individual can get quite gripped in whatever are the details on the surface that may be driving that frustration, and that lack of coordination between the truth and what appears on the surface. And so, when the individual is gripped by it, it can frequently come up as, well, I'm angry because of that. That person said this, blah, 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 or this situation is so annoying, or whatever, when in fact, what we're dealing with is a system, both. So like my beautiful friend, right? She was so brilliant. She was so bright. She was so transcendental. And then she lost it all when this horrible situation occurred. So you can imagine she probably went through times of feeling angry about the situation that occurred. But it rose up because the truth wasn't integrated at that point. And we're dealing with that. We deal with that physically as individuals, and we also deal with that collectively. So yes, at the collective level of our world as well, there are structures in place that are feeling that they're doing this comes back to the ribbons. It comes back to the scarves from yesterday. Remember the scarves from yesterday? Okay. Blue is tamas. It keeps us on the surface. And red is rajas. And so rajas is movement, right? So you get the tamas and the rajas twisting around each other. And all these gunas, they turn and they spin, right? I could have picked a different side of my scarf there, but like that. And then what happens is, on the surface, the three are always together. Oh, this one's twisted in with that one, boy. So on the surface, these two are twisted around. So what you get is sattva kind of covering it like that. Sattva covers it. So it appears on the surface like this lovely thing, candy. It's candy coated. It looks candy coated, but inside it's like Balenciaga, right? Candy coated Balenciaga, right? Maybe I shouldn't use that word. Am I going to get kicked off of YouTube for using that word? We'll see. Anyway, how can we support the understanding and focus of anger toward increasing truth in the world. We can set up a trigger that anger, we can do this energetically for ourselves. You can do this. You can set yourself up inside any way you like. You can set up anger as a trigger mechanism that causes awareness to witness and transcend, that pulls awareness into the source of creation. Right now, the way it is when anger rises up, the tendency is to get more out, to go, that made me mad. I didn't like that, or I didn't like that person or that situation. But you can set up it's like a little reminder, like a mnemonic, right? Where you think of one thing and it reminds you of the other thing, like that. You can create mnemonics. We create them all the time, like how you remember people's names and you can, what you can do is you can just set up a mnemonic in your mind. The human brain is capable of this. The intelligence is capable, that says, when I feel angry, that's the reminder to self, come back to the source of creation. Witness. My job is to witness. My job is to witness. My job is to discern the underlying truth that is responsible for half of this situation. You already know what the other half, if anger crops up, you already know what the other half is, right? The other half is some situation or circumstance or something. So that's half of it. But when the anger is felt, it's like, oh, that's the signal to me. I need to look at the other half. And the other half is the truth. And then as soon as you do that, what I found, and this I learned long ago through a difficult situation that I was in, as soon as you turn your awareness around and say, oh, the anger is here because I'm supposed to bring forth a truth, the heat and the gripping and the destructive nature of the anger just disperses. It disperses. It no longer has a purpose or a reason in you, and it goes away. And you're left with the situation of looking at, wow, there's all this crazy stuff going on the surface of life. And then there's the truth. And how do I position myself so that the truth can come forward? One, it's valuable if you can lean into your logos. You can lean into your speech and think about it, figure out a way. Nature will give you time to think. Anger tells you don't have time. You've got to just jump on that, hit it real hard, because that's part of the illusion of it. But if you turn awareness inward, what you find is that when awareness is turned inward, it's unconstrained by space and time. At these deeper levels of consciousness, there's no constraint of space and time. You can find answers. And just like when I was falling with the wheelbarrow, right? Like, I had so much time. There were so many points in that fall where I could have caught myself. And I watched myself pass them up. I watched myself go, no, I think I'm just going to fall with this. I'm just going to go with this fall, So it's the same with anger. It's the same with anger. You have time to think about what you're going to say. And you can lean into your logos. You can lean into the gift of speech. Again, that refined, beautiful, eternal, archetypal form of your own consciousness that's responsible for the way you bring truth to the surface. And the lady who asked this question, she has a wonderful way with words. You have a wonderful way with words, very carefully discerning when you, for instance, create questions, and you know how to dig into your logos. And then that way is like, how do I bring this truth to the surface in a way that it doesn't overwhelm? And how do I monitor the level of awakeness of whoever I'm dealing with, so that I don't bring the truth out in a way that they cannot comprehend. We don't want to throw pearls to swine, right? Not that we don't want to call people swine, but you get the idea that you don't want to waste, you don't want to delude the ignorant. You don't want to delude the ignorant by trying to tell them something that they're not ready for. It's only if a person's ready. And so part of the story is, if you're seeing a disconnect between the surface and the depths, then You can also ask the universe to bring you the path, to bring your truth, for the truth to come forward. And if you're dealing with people who cannot hear the truth, who are stubborn and difficult, and they will fight you before they will hear the truth, then sometimes the thing is to step back, to close that door, because another door will open. And there, for you personally, integrating that area of non-truth with truth doesn't necessarily depend on a particular person or situation, even though that might be what catalyzed the angry feeling. It doesn't depend on that. Sometimes the story is that person was wake up and they came to you and they made that situation because they needed you to tell them the truth. Then you tell them the truth. But if they're stubborn and angry and they're going to fight you and they're not going to let you tell them the truth, then you close that door and you allow the universe to open a door that allows you to integrate that truth. It allows you to bring that truth out to someone who is receptive and open and able. Bring it forth with some care so it doesn't overwhelm. Beautiful, 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 beautiful question. Beautiful question. I hope that made sense to everyone. Okay, the lady who gave the chapter the point about anger being the enemy on earth. When the flow of a particular desire is obstructed by another flow or energy is produced at that point of collision, right? And this flares up as anger, which disturbs, confuses, and destroys the harmony and smooth flow of the desire. Yes, I like that. I like that you're kind of connecting the concept of anger with unfulfilled desire. The nature of fulfillment is that the source of creation is all fulfillment. It's just pure fulfillment. And it rises up because it's going to find expression in the relative. And as it rises up, this pure fulfillment rises up as waves of desire. And the desire becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And I know you know this, but I'm just saying it for everyone. So I'm kind of like setting the context to address this because it's a great point. It's a great question. So the field of absolute infinite fulfillment starts to rise up in waves of desire. And the waves of desire become stronger and stronger and stronger until they get to the surface where the desire blossoms and fulfillment is gained, right? And so the desire resides in the period of subtle development. At the point where you've taken action and achievement, fulfillment, then fulfillment is here and fulfillment is there. And it's just a big field of fulfillment. The whole thing becomes a big field of fulfillment. And all those moments of desire just become like little dissonant notes that make the fulfillment all the more rich and beautiful and lovely, right? As in music, the ends of the resolution of a musical phrase is all the more beautiful because of the dissonance that happened right before the resolution. It's so beautiful. Okay. But sometimes her point here is that sometimes you have a desire and it doesn't get fulfilled. What do you do if the desire doesn't get fulfilled? And that can cause anger. And I agree. I think that does become the mechanic by which a lot of people who are unable to, they haven't integrated their experience of wholeness. That's how they end up in a situation that they define as that situation made them angry. And I agree that there are energies in creation that are more like holding, like creating boundaries and barriers. And that's a tamasic energy, right? Because the tamasic energy is what holds awareness and holds a person in the material level of creation, feeling separate from the source of creation. Your question particularly points to situations that are like double binds, right? You need something, you want something, you've got to, like I've had sometimes people come to me and say, I have problems sleeping, but I also have, other problems like neurological problems and digestive problems and problems with my senses of perception. But because I can't sleep, I can't do the thing that I need to do to heal myself, right? I can't rest. I can't rest effectively. And so, I have this desire. I want to get a good night's sleep. And if I could get a good night's sleep, then I could feel better. Then I wouldn't have the neurological problems or the digestive problems or whatever. And so it's like, there can be this like frustration because it can feel like you've got it, but you can't, that's like the whole mechanism of how everything is set up is sort of like against you, sort of something like that. You feel like you're in a double bind, that the solution, here's the solution, and I can't have the solution because I'm being blocked from the solution, and it's no good and it's no fun. And then anger rises up out of frustration. Those blockages come back to Saturn, by the way, and a person's relationship with Saturn as a planet and their karma with blockages, because Saturn is that planet that structures and creates blockages. So there's always a way out. There's always a way out. Double binds are essentially born of illusion that comes from seeing the world sort of with blinders on a little bit, right? That it's like, this is the only way I'm going to solve this problem, and I can't. So one of the ways to solve the problem is to approach or address the energy or the part of the physiology, which is Saturn, because the planets are also us. We are also them, and they are also us. Just like my two eyes here, they share my heart. So the heart is also part of the system for the eyes, right? It's not that the eyes are really separate from the heart. It's all part of the same system, and same with the planets and with us. So that connection to the planet Saturn, if somebody came to me and said that they were having that experience, I'd say, okay, we need to heal your relationship with Saturn. We need to look in at that part of you that is the great teacher that says no and sets boundaries in front of you so that you can't move forward in a particular area because you're supposed to move forward in another area. And this is the energy and the mechanism behind strokes. When strokes come, almost always they'll come to an area of the brain or of the nervous system that has been the one that the person really leaned into and was sort of depending on, you could say, that when a person just like when problems are, like I did this for years, when problems would arise, my go-to was work harder. Oh, there's a difficulty here. Well, what more can I give? How can I give more into the situation to make it, and I still find myself doing that a little bit. And then when I do it, often the boundary comes down harder. Now it does. Now, I wasn't able to hear that message earlier in my life. And so I gave and gave and gave and gave and gave and gave until I broke myself. And I wouldn't be here with you today if I hadn't done that. So, so good lesson to be learned. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to. Giving more is not always the answer to every problem. Because there came those problems. I met problems that there was nothing more I could give. Nothing I could give would solve the problem. So I'm like, well, I'll give till I die. It's like, no, you can't die. You're not allowed. It's like, oh, no way out. So, yeah, we give. There's always a way. So it's working with that subtler, larger aspect of one's own nature, that Saturn energy, with reverence and appreciation for the fact that sometimes the lessons come in the form of boundaries that stop us from fulfilling our desires. And what does that mean? And it's not like the desire is wrong. It's just that the desire has to wait. The desire has its own optimal timing. The desire has its place because we're connected to everybody and everything. And everything you do, everything we do impacts everybody else, even small things. Here's one last question. How are we doing for time? Let's see. Did we start at 1:30, Tom, or 1?
Yeah, it's been 1 hour and a half.
It's been an hour and a half. Okay. Were you about to write me a note and tell me that I went over time? Oh, he was writing me a note and told me I went over time. Well, there's just one more little, and I think it's just a comment, not a question. So I'll just share it with you because it comes from, again, a very wise woman who's also an energy healer. Both of all those last questions came from people who are really great healers. Each re-entry into the absolute has an angle, which creates a new angle coming out again. Yes. With the gains of the integration incorporated. Well put. Well put. Absolutely. It's never just, I mean, it can be straight in and straight out, but the truth is that we bring a lot of baggage with us when we go into the absolute. And some of it is worth keeping on the exit. And so some of it is like aligns with the intention of the creator and some of it doesn't. So beautiful. So we carry out with us whatever we carried in that aligned with the creator, we carry that back out with us. And we get to start fresh with all the best of our material. Anyway, so thank you, everyone. I know I didn't talk extensively about the three gunas today, as I did yesterday, but hopefully for those of you who are interested, you can go back and look at all the charts and all of my fabulous artworks and enjoy that as well. And thank you for being with me. I love this. I love being with you. I always have a lot of fun and I feel like I learned so much. I learned your light shines so brightly in my heart and my world. And it helps new knowledge come forward. So anyway, thank you for being with me for this set. It's been just lovely to be with you. And I look forward to seeing you guys again and being with you again soon, sometime soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.